on behalf of the PKE Alumni Executive Planning Committee. I'd like to welcome everybody today. My name is Bill Barkovitz. I was part of PKE 139 and was lucky enough to have Dr. Matamati as part of my session. So really pleased to have him back again today. Just a reminder, this event is being recorded, so please be on your best behavior. Thank you to the rest of the PKE Planning Committee as well, Alan Goad, Jeanette, and Amy, for helping to put this together, as well as Bridget. This is the last session of our first PKE speaker series that we started last year. And so we saved the best for last. And we're actually looking forward to kicking off another speaker series coming soon, probably later in the fall. And with the objective that one of these days, we're actually going to have another in-person PKE summit. Not sure when that's going to be, that's TBD, based on what's going on in the world now with COVID, but we're looking forward to that. So in the meantime, we're going to keep these speaker series going. A couple quick notes before we get started. If you haven't joined Pep Connect, it's a great place to stay in touch with what's going on with the PKE program. You can get information, events, contacts, and so please sign up if you haven't done so already. And then the other thing is just to remind everyone, the best way to get, keep PKE growing and the alumni group growing and keep the program strong is to refer people to the program. And so if you have, family, friends, colleagues that you think would benefit and also contribute to, the PKE community, please go ahead and refer them. Pearl Quintana is the contact person. So you can see her name and contact info there. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Dr. David Smith, Professor of Economics, Associate Provost of Online Programs, and Chair of the PKE Faculty Committee. And he's going to introduce today's speaker. So with that, I turn it over to Dr. Smith.
Thank you very much, Bill. I appreciate that. And just want to bring warm greetings from the PKE faculty and the PKE Program Committee. We're delighted with the success of the speaker series this year and their engagement. And just want to share just a couple brief updates on things happening with the PKE committee, and then get to our main event for today. First of all, we're excited as we have the opportunity to do more in-person activities. One that has been on the back burner for quite some time is our global trip. So we're actively planning. Many of you, I'm sure, know Dr. Demos is taking a group of 50 plus executive students to Greece and has all of the contingencies and provisions in place so that it's a safe event. So we're really excited to be able to offer that to many students who've been waiting quite some time for that part of their curriculum. In addition, we're kicking off PKE 147 in person and looking forward to getting a new group off the ground and with more kind of regular in-person activities. I have had a chance to see the incoming group. It's a really good group. Our goal is to continue to make the program more valuable and to bring in high caliber students so that your alumni community remains strong and vibrant and full of accomplished individuals such as yourselves. So really pleased with the new group coming in. I think it's between 12 and 15 students. And we were on a pretty short kind of recruiting cycle this time, so we're pretty pleased with the class that's coming in. In addition to that, we're in the midst of what's referred to as a program review. Every 5 years, actually every year, we evaluate our program and line it up against the goals that we've set out and established. And we produce annual reports, but every 5 years we do a deeper dive into the curriculum, into the co-curricular components, into student feedback, alumni feedback, other stakeholders as well. And we do a kind of more significant look into where we could potentially improve the program, where new investments might make sense. And so it's something we do every 5 years within every program at the Graziadio School. And it's been a really good opportunity for us as a faculty team to work together to think about ways that we can strengthen the program that you all know and love so much. So those are some of the things that are going on in PKE. Without further ado, though, I'd like to introduce my good friend and many of yours as well, Kurt Matamedy, Professor of Strategy and Leadership at Pepperdine Graziadio Business School. Kurt received his PhD and MBA from UCLA. He also has a Master's of Science in Electrical Engineering from UC Santa Barbara. Kurt helps develop and grow companies. He works with management and strategic planning and execution, trains and develops high-performing management teams and executive talent. He is a frequent speaker and well sought after and highly sought after at national and international conferences. His professional experience extends beyond academia and consultation. It includes hands-on CEO and executive positions. He has served to a long-term as consultants in firms in a broad range of universities all over the world. He also co-founded the doctoral program in organizational change at Pepperdine. And I'm really looking forward to his talk today. I'm sure you are as well. So Kurt, please take it away. We're looking forward to what you have to say.
Thank you so much, David. I really appreciate the introduction. And thanks very much for the steering committee that made this happen. Bill, Alan, oh my gosh, Jeanette, and of course, Amy, as well as a lot of other people who really chipped in and made this thing possible. I miss everybody. No PKE class have I finished that I've later on not missed my students or colleagues. So thanks very much. I turn this thing over to Bill. Today's session is basically, I don't have any slides. Bill was very kind of direct to say that, Kurt, this is going to be a question and answer session and not a presentation. It's good to see everybody. Wonderful.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and get things started out. Essentially, this is going to be a open mic type session. Now, if you're not actively talking, it's probably best to mute your mic. We've all been on these plenty of times. But feel free to ask questions. If you don't want to ask a question on the open mic, or you think of something you want to throw it into the chat, I'll pick it up off the chat and then ask Dr. Kurt as we go. So I'm going to go ahead and kick things off. And we'll start with a fairly broad question with Kurt, which is, what do you think that the pandemic over the last, what are we now, 18, 19 months? I can't keep track anymore. What has it revealed about business strategy?
I didn't have any of these questions in advance, so Bill is giving me the test of my life today. Pandemic has had tremendous impact. It's really in every level that you can think of. In terms of businesses that we have, the industries, the governmental relationships, it is a transformational change in the way we think about the world and the relationships we have with other countries, as well as industries within the country itself. And what is amazing, a good deal of my work in the past has been trans-organizational system. And trans-organizational system is about how collective of organizations implicitly or explicitly collaborate or compete to make events happen. And when you think of we putting on a vaccine under the circumstances that we were facing, the rapid phase, going through all of the FDA and all of the regulatory processes and being successful is unbelievable. There is no parallel to this in a history. It is worldwide effort. So it what has done is to bring to our consciousness the level of connectivity that our planet Earth. And this connectivity is, of course, is a component of what we refer to as disruption, new innovations, new way of more or less be diffuse or spread innovation worldwide. And the level of understanding and thinking has lifted to a different level. Of course, I'm sad about a lot of losses. I'm very sad the circumstances that many nations are currently facing. They don't have access to vaccine. The death rate in other parts of the world is substantial.
Okay, can I go next? Kurt, how are you?
Oh, fantastic.
So I'm not asking my question from California anymore. Due to the pandemic, we moved to Colorado, so CA to CO. I had to think a lot about PKE in the last few months, because basically what you guys told us, speaking also of our good friend, Professor Demos, and also you, I was actually email chatting with John Scully the last 2 days. Also, is like, be flexible, anticipate certain risks as much as you can, anticipate, learn from the past. Demos always said like, hey, what happens here? Be prepared for the future. Be agile, right? I also actually printed out a few pages of your script where we talk about strategy and different options we have, different scenarios we have to think in. Probably the question that I have, and I thought about this a little bit, is like, would actually be the pandemic or a scenario like a global scenario like the pandemic be an interesting framework to include into all of you guys's curricula from a financial perspective, strategy perspective, what happens, when I think of Dr. Demos also, what happens with unemployment, what happens inflation, everybody talks about inflation. What does this mean for, real estate companies? What does this mean for e-commerce companies? There's like so many facets. The build space in data centers right now is going through the roof because we all need computing power to keep up with, tracking all these Amazon vans and all this stuff. So would that be actually an interesting scenario? I mean, we were like all in La La Land in, January 2020. We kind of saw, maybe something is coming, but maybe washing hands is enough. And then March hit, right? And I went to Trader Joe's and the shelves were empty. I mean, are you guys thinking about, including things like that to make it like really real? Because when we sat in the classroom, sorry for babbling on here, when we sat in the classroom, we're like, yeah, scenarios. Well, it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and there are cycles, and we'll see how we deal with it. But now it's hit all of us in negative ways and in good ways, right? I mean, we completely reallocated our assets, as you can imagine, from CA to CO. Good things happened to us. Health-wise, other people were in dire needs, and other nations are in dire needs. So how do we actually utilize the good and the bad in future PKE curricula?
Well, what we're going through a major transition right now, which is dimensions that we haven't really included in business world thinking. And those have to do with ecology, biology, and social trends. We have population issues. China, for example, is, the population is going to diminish in terms of productivity of their. And worldwide, you can see what is happening in Africa in terms of population growth, in India and other places. So we have population issues that are biological components, which we are just facing, and also global warming. And those factors are additional issues that we would need to deal with. Now, let me kind of mention this thing in every class that I say. We tend to be linear thinkers oftentimes. And when you do scenario building, linear thinking doesn't work. When you look at technology impacts social system impacts technology, all of these components have impact to one another, creating clusters and complexes. And we go with a heritage of, today is like tomorrow, or today is like yesterday, and tomorrow is going to be like today, and kind of a linear thinking, because it's convenient, and we miss, and then there are surprises. In terms of including the curriculum of PKE curriculum is already pretty heavy as it is. Of course, the notions of these variables coming into it are really important, and definitely in the strategic planning, there's a front end of the strategy that we work on. Yeah, and there are other things that are happening. At the meantime, I have to tell you, this is the best time of the human race. We have never had it this good. Look at the health system that we have. Look at their luxuries and comfort that we have. And the massive amount of wealth that we have generated. I'm so happy that I'm living in this world. And I'm even, sometimes I feel like I'm missing really so much not living on this planet Earth 150 years from now. I think things are going to be just even better. I really do.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing. And I agree. We tend to be linear thinkers, right? And I mean, for us as a family, we broke out of a little bit of this linear thinking last summer. I can share more offline, but it was quite a ride, a wild ride, a good ride so far. It's a challenge for us. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Hey, Kurt, Peter Curtin.
Good to see you. My gosh.
Hey, the question that crosses my mind is, I think we could have had this subject anytime in the last 20 years. I mean, we always seem to be talking about it's an unprecedented age of disruption. What's different about this time, if anything, and what should we be thinking about differently as a consequence of that?
I'm so glad you asked this question because, management field is fashionable. We have fashions. Every period, every 10 or 15 years, we come up with concept and everything twists toward that, whether it's culture or it is, all of it, whether it's PERT, zero-based budgeting or all of this, or all sorts of things, productivity, lean processes, or just a number of them, which catches our attention. A lot of those consulting firms make a good living out of these models. So it's fashion. It's like, now the fashion right now is disruption. Wherever you go, everybody talks about disruption. There is nothing new about disruption. Disruption has been part of our human heritage and journey. From very beginning, what has changed is the intensity, frequency, and connectivity that we have, right? So what is going on? I mean, you look at it. John Jacob Astor was born in 1700. The ship basically carried cargoes to China. They had to travel 3 years around Africa and bring in trades to New York City. He traded into Europe, and we're talking about late 1700, early 1800s. That was innovative. That was unbelievable. And the history of the combustion engines and so forth and so on. Now we have a lot more innovations. The times are shrinking, and we are changing. It's all about innovations. Disruptions are surprises that we get, right? And you can't think surprises. Look at what's happening to autos. We have electrical cars. 30 years from now, it's going to be all electric. And self-driving cars. What's the impact of self-driving cars? The neighborhoods are going to change. You're going to fetch, we share models that we have. You're going to fetch from your house a car to arrive to your house and go places. That has impact on the way we design cities and the way we work. That's just one component. And when you look at the impact of these changes, it makes it really exciting. and scenario building, the way we're talking about it, is evasive. And with artificial intelligence, oh my gosh. I worked early on in semiconductors, as you know. One transistor in 1965, military spec, was $150. Now we put in 1,000 of it in a chip and selling it for $100. I mean, we couldn't possibly imagine that. In this conference, I never forget, in Santa Cruz, we took Green Coupler and a whole bunch of people, high-tech people in Silicon Valley, to talk about the future. And one person says, this is 20 years ago. He said, our vision is the world is going to be so connected. You can connect with everyone on the face of the earth within 20 years. Half of the people couldn't believe it. But look at it. You pick up your cell phone, you can reach people in Africa, in Asia, anywhere, right? The connectivity is unbelievable. These things are not disruptive. These are innovatives. We've seen this exponential innovations coming through is helpful. Take it to medical fields. It is funny that we have to make an appointment with a doctor, go sit there for 2 hours, and the doctor comes in and says, all of those things. All of that can be artificial intelligence going to help us. We do it so quickly without visiting, virtually not visiting physicians. It is an unbelievable world. It is such a great world, evolving and changing. And we've got to be really happy to be living at this era and looking forward. I don't know, I did answer your question. The last time we spoke, I was in Amsterdam, remember? So it's a long time ago, yeah.
Yeah, so as you think about it, Kurt, I'm sorry to just follow up. What you're saying is there are fashionable things that will come and go, but there are some core disruptions that are just keep going and keep going.
But I wouldn't call them disruptions, they're innovations. There are sometimes exponential innovations. What do we call them disruptions? What do we call them discontinuous? It's just evolution and it's change, right? And disruption, you're sleeping and the kids scream at you and disrupts your sleep. Yeah, if you're sleeping, it's viewed as a disruption. But if you're aware and you're thinking and you're reading and you're going to conferences and you're exchanging information with others, this is the magic of this Silicon Valley. That's why I can never leave Silicon Valley. The discussions here at the high levels are really fascinating. Look at what has happened, look at what Amazon has done. Remember we did in our course a case, Barnes and Nobles and Amazon.
Yes.
At early stages, I would say, where would you invest? And most of my students would invest in Barnes and Nobles. A bookseller has changed. Roughly 65% of online transaction purchases are done through Amazon. I mean, this is wonderful. I mean, I can't say this is discontinuous. I said, just go for it. Not enough, more, This is my view.
Okay. Thanks,
Kurt. Kurt, Jim McCormick, it's great to see you again.
Thank you.
120. As a physician executive, I'm in the middle of that disruption, if you will. And I have seen profound changes in behaviors, profound changes in service delivery, just you name it within healthcare. This has been a remarkable time to be in healthcare. But I'm inside all of that disruption, if you will, for the term. From the outside, where do you see the future of healthcare going? Are we going in an Amazon direction where medical services are no longer distributed at a hospital or an office? And what's your future for healthcare if you could take a stab at 5 to 10 years?
I give you an example, looking backward, and then I go forward. For 12 years, I worked with the CEO of one of the major hospitals in Los Angeles. And this is 20 years ago and so forth. reinforced seat belts, and all of those active seat belts. We had to reduce our customer base in orthopedics and orthopedic surgery, and one of the floors diminished, right? Now, hospitals and healthcare has been pretty stodgy. There are components of government and providers and physician groups, as well as technologies that have been bringing to the hospital. Those sets been pretty regulated and more or less measured going forward with a lot of supervision and more or less controls. And the pieces of don't connect very well. You know, as you know, the admission process and bill collection don't talk to one another, right? And the floors don't talk to one another. And physicians themselves, cluster of physicians, are so vertically trained that they don't talk to one another. So you have a cumbersome, complicated system that it is, right? It is thirsty and hungry for innovation. It really is. And I think with artificial intelligence, this whole neural systems that we have in terms of, you know, more or less going into the DNA part of the humans to get into a point that you can virtually do diagnosis when a child is born in terms of implications of the health of the child and going forward. Re-educating the physicians from a stodgy silos that they live in sort of open dialogue and discussions is ahead of us. We are not there, but getting from here to there is going to be difficult because while all of this change is happening, you have patients who sit in the corridors and need immediate help. So that makes it really change. You've got to work today at this moment, perform at the excellent level. At the meantime, you have to have your eyes over the horizon and see what is coming up. You know, so it's really a fascinating process. The places that I'm really looking for right now, right now I'm in Silicon Valley, and in San Francisco, UC San Francisco, medical centers are really advanced. They're making some really groundbreaking advances in terms of bringing artificial intelligence within the domain, within the walls. And it is there, and it is in Boston. And my cousin is a professor at Harvard, and he has virtually an unlimited menu of the research that he's doing with Mass General up there and Harvard more or less collectively together, working together. I had him in a couple of my classes talking about the pandemic and this virus. It was really interesting. So you just have to bear it. It's just basically learning and trying to get it on this other side into the future and bringing it back into the, bringing it back to your own job with a tremendous resistance that you're feeling in terms of change within the hospital and the healthcare system. There's a lot of resistance.
It's a fascinating time to be in that place, and you're right. The here and now is profoundly important and requires attention.
Yes.
And can prevent you from seeing the future. But I'm actually quite confident and optimistic that the future is going to be the difference between LPs and Pandora and streaming music. I think we're undergoing a profound change.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and.
Is that
there's a question
so far, Bill?
So far, so good. Hi, Marks. We'll go ahead. There's a question that came in over the chat. It says, are we seeing a different level of mutual distrust? And if so, how does that equation factor into strategic thinking?
Mutual distrust. And say that again, mutual distrust impacting.
Hey, Kurt, this is me, Rick Gibson.
Yes.
And I raised that question. I'm just I see a high level of distrust at the very same time that we are connecting and working together, I also see a tremendous amount of distrust in one another. And I'm wondering if that is historically unusual, or is it just more of the same? But it seems to me that that plays a role in the way we've got to be thinking about whatever enterprise it is that we're leading. How do we work through that? And is there a strategic way to think about that?
Yes, Rick, first of all, it's wonderful to see you. You know, you're one colleague that has also impacted my life. And among many. Let's put it this way. A whole bunch of people are sitting in a dark cave. And all of a sudden, the sunlight comes in. It's confusion. What are we facing right now is a lot of assumptions we have made in terms of social, political world that we used to live in. And with the changes which are coming, and I hate to use this notion of paradigm shift, with a notion, a lot of those assumptions are being tested. You know, these are political assumptions we're making, assumptions about family, assumptions about careers, assumptions about rigid finances. Look at the Fed. What is Fed doing right now, for example? In some ways, Fed is really struggling to get the economy going again. So it creates conflict. It creates, it brings us to our limit of understanding. And when we get to our limits of understanding, then we kind of sometimes become too rigid in our belief system and not compromising, especially when we become defensive. The political and the differences that we are experiencing right now, the conflicts, they are not sustainable. We went through it in the 60s. Every major kind of a shift, we've gone through it. And we will resolve this. Lucky for us, we have a great country. Look at what forefathers had to go through. I mean, when they gave us this tremendous gift of Constitution of America, Bill of Rights, it was counter to a lot of things which were happening at the time. Within themselves, there was conflict. There was conflict all around them. And those differences they were basically the grounds for growing and coming and getting above the conflicts and coming with really novel solutions and pathways into the future that we are today enjoying. And it's gonna happen. I have full trust. I'm optimistic about this is going to happen. We are gonna come together. We're gonna be more noble and enlightened as it goes on. Look at the darkness, parts of darkness in our history that we have put behind us, or trying to put behind us. So this patience, understanding, empathy, communicating, caring for one another, caring for.
I have a comment. This is Gary Goltz from PKE 73. The first time I met you was at our first meeting. The first thing out of your mouth was, let's talk about the meaning of life. When I was done with my thesis, I came to argue with you because you only gave me a very good instead of an excellent. And I wanted to stand up and be recognized. And you looked at me and you said, Gary, 100 years from now, will this matter? And I started thinking about that. And before I could even form my next thought, you said, what would? And the first thing out of my mouth was judo. Back then, I was a very big executive entrepreneur. But for some reason, when you hit me with that question, the only thing I could think of was judo. Fast forward 20, 30 years, president of the U.S. Judo Association. I developed the biggest tournament in the United States. I've trained people like Ronda Rousey. I'm still teaching 5 classes a week and developing kids and helping them understand the meaning of life. And I just wanted to tell you, I learned one thing from you was to look at things from a macro perspective. And you are my professor. And I honor you. Thank you, Sensei.
Gary, it wasn't me, it was you. It was you. You took that moment and made it a learning moment. You know, I just said things came out of my head, but you took and really worked on it. I can't take credit. You're the one who gets the credit for that. Bravo.
Hey, Kurt, this is Ari. How are you doing?
Fantastic.
Oh, happy to hear. Hey,
Thank
I
you.
have had this kind of macro economy in my mind, and when we see what is happening around us, governments and corporations are running deeper and deeper in debt, and PE numbers are as high, close to that high it was before IT bubble blew out, and stock prices are artificially high in a way because of really, really high PE numbers. Do you have any red flags in your mind we should follow when we navigate through these coming times?
Well, you know, I'm not an economist. I've read I studied the field, but I don't label myself an economist. So I'm not really authorized to really make any pronouncement. The world is shifting. And as long as you stay with the right values and you have confidence and you have God in mind, we'll do all right. We have competitions. You know, we have China to deal with, and India is behind China. We have shifts in Middle East, and we've seen what has happened in Afghanistan. I think as a nation, we are learning. We're learning how to more or less manage our resources more efficiently, more effectively, taking care of our people and be a major contributor to positive force in the world. And, you know, Pepperdine epitomizes that. Pepperdine is an institution which stands for rightfulness, in my experiences with that. So we need to leave the tensions and turn those tensions into positive force for doing things a better way for other people, to kind of raise the level of understanding and intellect of humanity, so become better in service of one another and mankind going forward. Now, the stock market, it is a fluke. You know, the pandemic was really impactful. It's destabilized our economy to some extent. The Fed is trying. They're good people in Fed. They're trying to really bring the system back together, and they will succeed. We were through 9/11. We were through the 2010, you know, more or less collapse of the financial system. We have been through wars. We will go through this. So the best thing is to be right-minded, think straight, be conservative in investments, manage your resources, and don't forget the love for the ones who you love, your family and friends. That's what life's all about. Your life is as rich as the time you spend to enjoy life with the people you love and the service of the others. The rest of it can be frivolous.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you.
So I've got another question that came in that's kind of along the same lines as one of the previous questions, which is, you know, society is more divided than ever, and people are making business decisions and personal purchasing decisions based on a person or a company's political view. So from a strategy standpoint, how can you approach that? What kind of a strategic approach can you take that is acceptable to both sides? I'm not sure if there's a one answer, but let's hear your thoughts.
With strategy, you succeed when you take the high road and then get, twisted into the dark corners of the street. You have to take the high road. And this is one thing America has done, not for ourselves, but also for the world. Always taking the high road. And there are periods that we more or less regress, we difficulties, we are humans, we make mistakes, but all, in terms of a strategy, rely on your vision. Rely on your vision. It's the vision that drives your mission in life. And it's mission that gives you the values that you are basically going to surround yourself, protect yourself and others around you. So vision in a strategy is a major part of the strategy making. Otherwise, a strategy is just a plan or a to-do list. And the word strategy is so compromised. It lost its meaning. I worked with George Steiner, was a fantastic guy, just great guy at UCLA. He came up with the notion of opportunities and threats and models that we use in therapy. And he went through Korea War and he experienced all of that. He always said the social responsibility, ethics and morality. And my father always told me, we have freedoms. We have freedoms. We have freedom of speech. An example of freedom of speech is you don't have freedom of speech to say what you want to say. You also have to protect the others to say what they want to say. You have freedom of accepting what others say or not. So freedom has many dimensions to it. And a major part of it is tolerance, acceptance, helpfulness, caring. Those are the Christian veins within us. That's what makes us whole. So morality and strategy have to go together, my friends. You can't do without one another.
Okay, going back to one of the topics I think you addressed a little bit earlier on kind of education. We had a question that came in. What do you think about how education is going to be delivered due to the disruption, and will there be more innovation on that?
Really, this is something that at Pepperdine we're struggling every day nowadays, and also in other universities. We have a portfolio of methods and approaches to education. And we are more or less in a setting in which there are a lot of experiments going on. Now, there are some fundamentals in here. You have to develop the intellect, the mind, and you have to do it rigorously in terms of how you think, what you work with, data, facts. You also have to more or less educate in terms of values, morality, and conduct. Those two components go together. Now, if you load too much on the rationality and not enough in more or less the other part of human spirits, you suffer. If you go the other way, you also will suffer. So it's mutually synergizing the two, and synergizing is 2 + 2 = 7. It's basically synergizing the two. We know the more technology you bring in, the more touch you need. Otherwise, the alienation settles in. Our grandchildren, COVID really impacted them. They were locked into their homes. And two of my grandchildren live up in Seattle. They live 7 miles from the epicenter of COVID when it more or less hit the area. They've been locked down, the 2 girls. And they suffer as a result of it. I talk with them, they're going to go back to school. They're excited and anxious, right? Their relationship with other girls, both girls, is frail. They have one or two friends that they talk to. The conversation has gone stale. They don't do enough exploration. So in terms of education, we have to be robust at all levels to create the experience as well as the intellect with certain guidance. So I worry about too much online, right? Without having face-to-face. You know what PK has done for you in terms of being face-to-face. In terms of spontaneity, having informal time to break bread together and talk your issues together and then build friendships, as well as more or less concentrating on the content. The educational system is also being rigid in many ways. We have systems which are really not functioning anymore. Our research in some areas is frivolous, useless, has no impact on humanity or improving conditions of persons. And there are biases built into that. And as academicians, we also siloed in terms of our own disciplines to very nitty-gritty. And Pepperdine's gift always been to bring the light of the practice into the towers, into the academe, in a way of creating external validity to what we do. So I think in Pepperdine, we will continue to prosper and move forward. And although there is an array of different models emerging, effective, some not so effective, some basically monetary based, and others tend to be too far astrophere to be helpful. So all of it's going to come together. Again, the path is the high road. The path forward is following the goodness, and we'll survive. We'll do all right. We'll do all right. Our education system by far better than it was 40, 50 years ago, is much more available. It really is. You look at America in rural area, the level of education was provided to them even 40, 50 years ago, comparison to now. It's better, much better now. But, we're making progress.
Hey, good. If you don't mind, I'm going to ask you.
Okay, Brian?
Can you hear me? Yeah, so we were talking about strategy in the age of disruption. You're really saying it's strategy in the age of innovation, and I think increasing rate of innovation. Is it really just hopeless for most of us to think about strategy when stuff is changing so fast? I get what you're saying about, have a vision, hew to the vision, but should we be thinking about strategy in a completely different way? Throw away the Porter models, think about innovation as really your opportunity and your threat, and just put together a completely different model about how we strategize for most smaller businesses.
Yeah, you're doing your trick with me. We always do this together. No, I'm not saying to throw Porter away. There's some fundamentals which are really important. There's some truths that are really uncompromisable, like value chain or competition the way we are. But there is beyond competition, it's collaboration. Even when you compete, you have to internally collaborate. But so much better when you have blue ocean, go places, stake your grounds, undiscoverable places, right? And competing for competing's sake is self-defeating. This is what happened in 2010. Collateral obligations, right? Remember those CDOs? All firms were competing with one another. All of them were going down the cliff, right? Together. And nobody had peripheral vision of what we are doing. No, strategy is important. In the age of innovation, it's even more important. Developing the right innovations, useful innovations, reaching the customer needs in a profound way, you putting online a lot of resources and a strategy is critical. What I'm saying is a new way of thinking about the strategy, not into the cubby holes, not frozen into some rigid frameworks, which came from a century early or maybe 50 years earlier. But looking afresh in terms of what's going on and developing new ideas, taking us forward. Strategy is important. Strategy is a vehicle to execute your vision, right? So if you don't work on the vision, strategy becomes a mechanical exercise. And that's what has happened with deal of time. So if you don't have the high goals for yourself, the pathway, the North Star there, then, it becomes really difficult.
My question has to do with today's global supply chain, how it's been powerfully impacted.
Well, the supply chains are impacted. You look at the models that Cosmo and others have in terms of how virtual those supply chains have become in terms of flow of the information, what the artificial intelligence are doing. And then, we look at blockchain, cryptocurrency, all of those things are tied in together. Those are new models emerging. Platform. This iPhone is synthetic market. It's a platform. And this synthetic market, you can put your merchandise on it, and as soon as you put on it, it becomes a commodity. But it ties into supply chains. And it ties into virtual supply chain and real supply chains. So supply chains are here to stay. You remember what happened just a month or so ago, that ship got stuck in Suez Canal, right? And there were supply shortages as a result of it. There you are. That's supply chain. And supply chain, as you know, is part of the value chain. So those issues are basically, the concepts are going to stay here. The way we think about them will change over time. There are going to be a lot of innovation and technology pumped into them. It will be different. There will be more efficiencies. There will be greater reach. Yeah.
I think we probably have time for one more. We actually had one come in from Richard regarding, I think it's somewhat related to the previous question, talking about supply chains, but more specifically, what are your thoughts on the fact that China kind of commands the supply chain in terms of silicon chips, trade lanes, et cetera, et cetera?
This is really a thing that I think a lot about. When you become if you look at our businesses as a whole, cluster of businesses in America, not all, but some portion of it, we became too content. We just became too content. It's very similar to larger companies, which basically become content with their own processes. We gave away too much without being thoughtful, right? We shut down plants in mid-America. We affected communities all around us. When we brought in cheaper products from China, we imported those cheap products. We also imported poverty from China. We put our workforce aside. The two go together. At times we were myopic. But now, the struggles we're going through with pandemic, we're coming together. Maybe sometimes when you come together, you see your differences. It's opening the pathway to, again, waking up and owning what our country, our place, and having a pride in terms of producing what we need more effectively in here, not cutting people, not going isolationist, not shutting doors, but a parity in terms of what we do. We spent $3 trillion in Afghanistan. You know, where's the payoff? Where's the payoff? Those are the things we learn. We are now learning. You know, we were big and strong, and nobody could hurt us. Now we are getting hurt. And through that hurt, there's great lessons. And I'm optimistic that we're going to learn and go forward. So China is going to be also have its own shortcomings. They don't have political stability long term. You can't run on an autocratic system for too long. You saw what happened in Russia and other parts of the world. Their economy, the population is changing. They're getting older. I mean, you look at the forecast in terms of population of China, they're going to have, you know, they're not going to have the manpower over long term. They're vulnerable. They have debt. And we still have the key. We really do. So, yeah, we have to be mindful and thoughtful and measured in terms of how we respond to the world around us and not be silly, you know, getting involved in engagement in wars with no purpose, no end.
Thank you, Kurt. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I kind of infused a little bit of my political philosophy in this. I didn't mean it.
No problem.
I regret.
Not a problem. Not a problem. We've only got a couple minutes left, so I think we're going to wrap up. You know, thanks again, Dr. Kurt and everyone else. I think Bridget's going to wrap us up here in the last couple minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Matamati, and to the Executive Planning Committee. Thanks again, everyone.